According to the federal government's own data, more than 266,000 Americans are sleeping outside or in vehicles on any given night. And in Silicon Valley alone, the number of people living full-time in cars, vans, and RVs has more than doubled since the pandemic. But here is what the Instagram version of van life never shows you. This is not a lifestyle choice for most of the people doing it. It is a survival system, quietly engineered by people who had no other option, and some of what they have figured out will genuinely surprise you. The van is not the problem. The condensation is. Every time a human being breathes, they exhale moisture. You do it roughly 22,000 times a day, and inside a sealed metal vehicle, all of that moisture has nowhere to go. It hits the cold steel of the walls and the windows and turns into actual visible water, dripping down your windows by morning, soaking into your sleeping bag, pooling underneath your mattress pad. This is not a minor annoyance. This is the thing that makes people sick. Mold grows inside vehicles faster than most people expect. A woman named Sandra, who lived in a Chevy Express cargo van in Portland for 14 months after losing her apartment during the pandemic rental surge, woke up one morning to find a thin green bloom growing along the seam where her wall insulation met the van floor. It had been there less than 3 weeks. The people who have been doing this long enough to develop strong opinions about it will tell you the same 3 things. Crack a window. Even in winter. Even just half an inch. That single sliver of airflow cuts condensation dramatically. Cover your windows with Reflectix. That silver bubble wrap looking insulation material from any hardware store, about $30 a roll, which creates a buffer of air between the cold glass and the warm interior. And run a small rechargeable fan on low all night to break up the still, moist air that pools around your head while you sleep. None of that is expensive. A $30 roll and a $20 fan. Less than 2 nights in a cheap motel. But you have to solve the condensation problem before it becomes a mold problem. Sandra gutted her entire build and started the insulation from scratch. 6 weeks of lost progress and nearly everything she had saved. The van is not the enemy. The moisture is. Where you park determines everything. There is an entire informal science to this, and the people who have mastered it will talk about it the way a chess player talks about openings. Every move has consequences 3 moves out. Walmart parking lots are the most famous option and the most misunderstood one. Yes, many Walmart locations historically allowed overnight parking. But that policy has eroded significantly over the last 5 years. Individual store managers make the call now, and more of them are saying no. Showing up at a Walmart at 11 at night assuming you have a spot is the kind of assumption that leaves you circling a neighborhood at 1 in the morning with nowhere to go. Hospital campuses are one of the best kept secrets among experienced van dwellers. The logic is simple. Hospitals run 24 hours a day. Their parking lots are full at all hours. A van sitting in a hospital overflow lot at 3 in the morning is essentially invisible because there is nothing unusual about a vehicle being parked there at any hour. Nobody looks twice. 24-hour gyms, which we will come back to in the next section, often have parking lots that are technically open all night and in neighborhoods that feel safer than a dark industrial street. Church parking lots are underused and overlooked. Most churches sit empty 5 or 6 days a week. Their lots are large, often well lit, and many congregation members, if they notice a van at all, are not the type to immediately call the police. A man named Raymond, who spent 8 months living in a Ford Transit in Nashville after a medical bankruptcy wiped out his savings in 2022, said he settled into the same church parking lot 4 nights a week for nearly 5 months. He left a note on the pastor's door early on explaining his situation. The pastor left a note back saying he was welcome to stay, and that the church bathroom around back would be unlocked on weekday mornings. Raymond still sends that church a $20 donation every month. He has for 2 years. The unwritten rules of stealth parking come down to a handful of principles that experienced people repeat almost like a checklist. Arrive late, Leave early. Do not run your engine for long periods in residential neighborhoods. Do not use bright interior lights at night. Keep your windows covered. Do not park in the same spot more than 2 or 3 nights running, and never ever park in a spot where you are the only vehicle for 100 yards in any direction. The wrong spot at the wrong time is not just inconvenient. It is a police knock at 2 in the morning, a request to move along, and in some cities following the Supreme Court's 2024 ruling in Grants Pass, a potential citation or worse, just for being there. Where you sleep is not just a comfort question. It is a safety question. It is a legal question. And the people who have been doing this long enough to know treat it like one. The gym membership that changes everything. All right, quick pause here, because I promise this is the most practical $25 any person in this situation can spend. And it almost sounds too simple to be real. Planet Fitness charges $10 a month for a basic membership. Some locations offer a $25 tier that includes access to any location in the country. For a person living in a van, that is a shower every single day. That is a clean bathroom at 6 in the morning when gas station bathrooms are locked and public parks do not open for 2 hours. That is a locker to store clean clothes. Many locations have Wi-Fi. Some have tanning beds, which, look, nobody is climbing out of a van in February thinking about their tan, but the point is that the membership gives you a legitimate reason to walk in, stay for an hour, use every facility, and walk out feeling like a person who has somewhere to be. Dignity is not a luxury item. It is a functional requirement for staying employed, staying mentally intact, and staying off the street in every sense of the word. A woman named Denise, who spent 19 months in a Toyota Sienna minivan in Phoenix after her divorce, left her with custody of her 2 children and roughly $400, said the gym membership was the first thing she bought when she got her first paycheck from the restaurant job she picked up 6 days after losing her apartment. She said showing up to work clean and smelling like a person who had not been sleeping in a vehicle was the reason she kept that job, which was the reason she eventually got out. The math is not complicated. $10 a month for a shower is 33 cents a day. A truck stop shower costs $14 per use. A gym membership is not a luxury. For a person living in a vehicle, it is load-bearing infrastructure. Heat kills. Faster than cold. Everyone worries about the winter. The frozen water bottles and the sleeping bags rated to -20, and the propane heaters and the ice scraper you keep inside the vehicle because you cannot reach the windshield from outside. All of that is real, and we will get to the cold side of things in the mistakes section. But the thing that catches people off guard, especially people who end up in vehicles during spring and summer, is that a parked vehicle in direct sunlight turns into a convection oven faster than almost any other enclosed space. On a 90-degree day, the interior of a parked van with the windows up can exceed 140 degrees Fahrenheit within an hour. In Phoenix in July, that number climbs higher. Heat stroke can begin at body temperatures of 104 degrees. It can kill within hours. The people who survive southern summers in vehicles have engineered solutions that are surprisingly low-tech. A reflective windshield sunshade on every window, including the rear, drops interior temperatures by 30 to 40 degrees. Parking on the east side of a building means the vehicle is in shade by early afternoon. A 12-volt fan running off a portable battery bank keeps air moving even with the engine off. Some van dwellers cut ventilation fans into the roofs of their vehicles, the kind sold for about $60 at RV supply stores, which pull hot air out of the vehicle and create a passive cooling effect. A man named Terrence, who lived in a Dodge Caravan in Tucson for 11 months, said he set a phone alarm for 6 every morning specifically to move the van from its overnight spot to a shaded location before the sun got high enough to start cooking the interior. He said he never missed that alarm. Not once. Cold is slow. Cold gives you time. Heat does not negotiate. The mail problem. Nobody solves until it's too late. This one is quiet. It does not announce itself the way cold or heat or moisture does. It creeps up on you over weeks. And by the time most people in this situation realize what is happening, it has already cost them something they needed. Here's the problem. Almost everything in American civic life requires a mailing address. Renewing a driver's license requires a mailing address. Applying for a job requires a mailing address on the application. Opening a bank account requires a mailing address. Receiving a benefits determination letter from a government agency requires a mailing address. Enrolling a child in school requires a mailing address. When you live in a van, you do not have one. And every single week that passes without solving that problem, another door quietly closes. The solutions that actually work are fewer than most people expect and more accessible than most people realize. A UPS store mailbox costs around $10 to $30 a month depending on the location and gives you a real street address, not a P.O. box number, which matters on forms that specifically say no P.O. boxes. A mail forwarding service like Anytime Mailbox or Traveling Mailbox gives you a digital address where mail is scanned and emailed to you, which works well if you are moving between cities. A sympathetic family member's address works as long as someone is actually checking the mail and the relationship is stable enough to count on. And here is the one most people have never heard of. The McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, which is a federal law, gives children experiencing homelessness the right to enroll in school without a permanent address, and with the same school they attended before losing housing. Which means that a parent in a van is not legally blocked from enrolling their kids. A lot of parents in this situation do not know that, and it costs them months. Fix the address problem early. Fix it before you need it. Because by the time you realize you needed it 3 weeks ago. Community is the real infrastructure. I want to tell you about a woman in Portland named Lydia. Lydia lived in a Honda Odyssey for almost 2 years starting in 2020. She was a former office manager who had been pushed out of her rental by a no-fault eviction when her landlord decided to convert the building to condos. She had no family in Oregon, a storage unit full of furniture she was paying $60 a month to keep, and a smartphone with a cracked screen. What Lydia eventually built, almost accidentally, was a WhatsApp group. She had found a safe parking spot near a hospital campus, connected with 2 other van dwellers through an online forum, and started sharing information. Which lots were being cleared? Which churches left their bathrooms unlocked? Which employers in the area were most likely to overlook the absence of a permanent address on an application? Which mechanic in the industrial district had been known to do basic repairs for people in tough situations at cost? Within 4 months, that WhatsApp group had 31 members. Someone in the group had a generator. Someone else had a medical background and helped people figure out which free clinics in the city were worth the trip. A retired teacher helped 2 people in the group get their GEDs while living in their vehicles. When someone's van got broken into, 6 people showed up to help them recover, relocate, and secure their remaining belongings. The informal networks that exist among people living in vehicles function like neighborhoods. They have the same logic. Information moves. Risks are shared. Resources are distributed. The person who figured out last month that a certain grocery store throws away perfectly good bread every Tuesday night at 10 makes sure everyone in the group knows by Wednesday morning. The people who try to do vehicle living completely alone, who stay quiet and invisible and never connect with anyone else in a similar situation, are the ones who end up in the hardest spots. And the people who survive the longest are almost always the ones who found at least one other person to share information with. Community is not a bonus feature. For people living in vehicles, it is the actual infrastructure. The mental game is harder than the physical one. Here is something that takes a while to articulate and even longer to understand from the outside. Hiding in plain sight, every single day, takes something out of you that is hard to name and almost impossible to replace on your own. You park in a neighborhood, and you pull your curtains, and you eat your dinner from a can, and you try to sleep while someone 30 feet away walks their dog and goes back inside to their warm-lit house. You spend the day performing normalcy. You go to the gym. You go to work, if you have work. You answer emails and make small talk and pretend that last night you slept in a bed in a room. And then you come back to the vehicle and you do it again. Day after day after day. A man named Curtis, who spent 2 years living in a Ford Econoline in Seattle, said the thing he was not prepared for was what he called the invisibility hangover. The way that spending all day pretending you are fine slowly erodes your actual sense of being fine. He said he started talking to himself in the van just to hear a voice that acknowledged he was there. The people who survive this stretch, and many do, describe a handful of things that made the difference. Maintaining any routine, even a small one. A specific time to wake up. A specific route for a morning walk. A cup of coffee made the same way every day. Routine is the scaffolding that keeps you from losing track of yourself when everything else is structureless. Staying connected to people, even through a phone screen, even imperfectly. Writing things down. One woman in her late 50s who spent 16 months in a Kia Sedona kept a notebook where she wrote 3 things every day that were true and real, and not about being homeless. Sometimes it was something she saw. Sometimes it was something someone said to her. Sometimes it was just the name of a song she had heard and liked. She said reading back through those notebooks later was the thing that helped her understand that she had still been a person the whole time. That the experience had not erased her. It hadn't. But she needed proof. And that notebook was the proof. Buying the wrong van. The Ford Transit aesthetic has been all over social media for years. The beautifully converted Sprinter with the fold-out bed and the butcher block counter and the little window above the kitchen. That is a real thing. It is also an expensive thing, and it has sent a lot of people into this situation starting from a financial hole they never escape. A high-mileage Sprinter with a diesel engine is an extraordinary money pit the moment anything mechanical goes wrong. And in a vehicle that is also your home, mechanical failure is not just an inconvenience, it is a housing crisis. The people who have navigated this well will give you the same counterintuitive advice every time. Buy the ugliest van with the most reliable engine you can find. A rusted-out Ford Econoline with 170,000 miles on a straight-six engine and brand-new brakes is a better home base than a beautiful Sprinter with a questionable transmission and a Mercedes diesel engine that costs $400 to diagnose when the check engine light comes on, which it will. Get a pre-purchase inspection from a mechanic who has no financial interest in you buying the vehicle. $30 for that inspection. Not optional. The van is your house. Buy it like a house, with suspicion and a professional opinion. Skipping the carbon monoxide detector. This one is short because it needs to be. Carbon monoxide is colorless, odorless, and lethal. Running a generator near a vehicle. Idling the engine for heat on a cold night with any kind of exhaust leak. Using a propane stove inside a sealed vehicle. Sleeping with the tailpipe accidentally blocked by snow or a drift of leaves. Any of these scenarios can fill the interior of a van with enough CO to kill a sleeping person before they wake up. A carbon monoxide detector costs between $15 and $30. Battery operated. Clip it to a shelf. Replace the batteries twice a year. That is the entire section. There's nothing else to say about it except that people have died for not having one. Do not be one of those people. Cooking inside without ventilation. Adjacent to the CO problem but worth its own mention because the scenario is slightly different. A 2-burner propane camp stove inside a sealed vehicle on a cold night, windows up, curtains drawn, everything closed tight, produces carbon monoxide and consumes the oxygen in the enclosed space simultaneously. The person cooking feels fine for a while. Then they feel a headache coming on. Then they feel tired. Those are not harmless symptoms. Those are the early stages of CO poisoning. Crack 2 windows on opposite sides of the vehicle before you light a burner. Every single time. Even in February. Even when you do not feel like it. The 5 minutes of cold air is not the problem. The alternative is. Mistake 4. Keeping all your documents in the van. Your birth certificate. Your social security card. Your passport if you have one. Your medical records. Your children's immunization history. These items cannot live in your glove compartment. Vehicles get towed. Vehicles get broken into. In some cities, law enforcement impounds vehicles during encampment clearings, and the process of retrieving belongings from impound can take weeks and cost hundreds of dollars you do not have. The people who have been through this once and come out the other side carry their critical documents in a waterproof zipper bag that goes with them everywhere, not stored in the vehicle, on their person, or in a locker, or with a trusted person, or in a safe deposit box at a bank, which costs less than $10 a month at many institutions. Lose a sleeping bag and you are cold for a week. Lose your birth certificate and you are fighting a bureaucratic battle for months. Keep the documents close. Treat them like the foundation they are. Trying to do it alone. This one is the quietest mistake and the most common one, and it connects back to everything that came before it. There is a particular logic to staying invisible when you are in this situation. You do not want pity. You do not want judgment. You do not want to become someone else's project. You have your pride, and you have worked hard to keep it. And the idea of telling another person that you are sleeping in a van feels like handing them something you will never fully get back. That logic is understandable, and it will make your situation worse. The people who climb out of vehicle living fastest, who land on their feet with the least damage to their health and their finances and their sense of self, are almost never the ones who figured it all out alone. They are the ones who told someone, who texted a cousin, who posted in an online forum, who walked up to another van in a parking lot and knocked on the window and said, "Hey, I just started doing this and I have no idea what I am doing. Do you have a minute?" There is a version of strength that looks like self-sufficiency and is actually just suffering quietly and calling it pride. And there is a version that looks like asking for help and is actually the thing that keeps you alive and functional and moving towards something better. Curtis, the man who spent 2 years in Seattle, said the best thing he ever did was tell his older brother what was happening. His brother could not offer him a place to stay. He had his own family in a 2-bedroom apartment and there was genuinely no room. But his brother started texting him every morning, every single morning for 14 months. Just checking in, just a few words. Curtis said it was the thing that made him feel like he still had a tether to the world, like someone knew where he was, like he was not just a van in a parking lot that nobody would notice if it was gone. That is not a small thing. That is everything. There are somewhere around 266,000 Americans sleeping in vehicles tonight. Not as an adventure, not as a content strategy, as a solution to a problem that the housing system, the healthcare system, and the economic system all had a hand in creating, and none of them have fully taken responsibility for solving. But the people inside those vehicles are not waiting for anyone to solve it for them. They are managing condensation. They are finding the right parking lots. They are buying gym memberships and fixing address problems and building group chats and writing in notebooks to prove to themselves that they still exist in a meaningful way. They have figured things out that most people with a lease and a mailbox never have to think about. And some of what they have figured out is genuinely impressive. Not in an inspirational poster kind of way. In a real human beings are astonishingly resourceful when they have to be kind of way. The next time you drive past a van with its windows covered, parked near a hospital or a church lot or a 24-hour gym, you are probably driving past someone who knows more about moisture management and stealth parking and the CO risks of a 2-burner propane stove than you ever will. They did not learn it because they wanted to. They learned it because they had to. And they are still out there, every night, figuring it out one parking spot at a time. If this video changed the way you see something you drive past every day, hit subscribe. I cover stories like this every week, the ones happening right now, right outside, that most people look away from. Click the video on screen. I think you will want to see what is in it.